Welcome to Beyond Pipeline. We talk about how to win the inner game of sales. My name is John Abush, and I'm your host. And today we have a very special guest. He's a senior sales development manager at Talkdesk and throws out some amazing outbound nuggets on LinkedIn. Without further ado, Parker Eide. Parker, what's going on, brother? How are you?
Hey, great to have great to be on the show, John. Appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you, dude. Thank you. We'll definitely dive into some outbound nuggets, as I'm sure that anyone listening to this has clicked on it because they saw your name, they want some outbound wisdom. But I do want to start with how you got into sales. From my LinkedIn research, it looks like you were like a diesel mechanic beforehand, or maybe throughout college or something. Would love to understand how you got into sales, and we can go
Yeah.
from there.
So I have probably done like I don't want to say every job under the sun, but I've done a lot of stuff from like landscaping to property management
Okay.
to working at mountain bike shops, working at clothing stores, and then my longest stint kind of after high school was I was going to college and then I was also working as a mechanic, and I kind of just stopped going to college because I enjoyed being a mechanic. I was making enough money to survive. And so I kind of decided that's what I wanted to do. My parents are both in sales or were both in sales. My mom worked for Xerox, my dad worked for Microsoft. And so
Okay.
obviously they had been in the tech sales realm, were always wanting me to follow their footsteps and do that. Me being typical teenager wanted to do the exact opposite of what my parents wanted to do. So no college, doing the diesel mechanic thing, and then basically like every time I'd be sitting with all the old mechanics at lunch, they're all beat up. They're just talking about, what else they would have done in their careers, just kind of reminiscing. And they just kept telling me, like, you're so young, like, go do something else, right? Like, anything else. Like, there's so many other career fields out there. Like, unless you like have dreams of opening your own shop or something someday, like, it was also probably because I wasn't the best mechanic, right? Like I was good, I could get stuff done, but it wasn't like I was some standout at this job.
Yeah.
Right? So they were probably also seeing that and being like, dude, like you're never really gonna like rise up the ladder too far here, but you have like other skills you could do. So um I started, to look at like getting into tech sales. And so, back then it wasn't even that long ago. There really wasn't any boot camps or any of this stuff that exists today. So I was applying and then I would get feedback that like, hey, we want to go with somebody who has sales experience, or hey, we want to go with
Yeah.
somebody who has a degree. So I was kind of lacking in both sides. And so a friend of mine worked for this financial company, that basically what they did is it was almost skip tracing, right? So a car would be out for repossession. It'd be your job to figure out where that car is so you could navigate the tow truck on like where to go pick it up and repossess the car. So what that job basically entailed was account management in a CRM, right? You get a list of accounts, cars that are out for repossession. Then you're pulling contact information, right, of themselves, the debtor, and then also family as well. And then you're making a ton of cold calls. And so a big thing there was people were scared to pick up the phone. And so I rose and became a top performer because I picked up the phone. But more importantly, that gave me the relevant experience I needed to, like, as people say, I guess, break into tech.
Yeah.
Because finally I had relatable experience to bring to the job. It's like, hey, you're hiring for an SDR. I have been cold calling people whose cars are out for repossession, and I make, between 500 and 600 cold calls a week to people who hate my guts and do not want to talk to me. And I've found ways to be a top performer, right? Like I
Yeah.
might not be using Salesforce, I might not be using these tools you're using, but I am having way more difficult conversations than your reps are having today. And
Yeah.
so I started to look at tech companies, and funny enough, my dad was going through the newspaper one morning and found this company, Riskalyze, that was hiring up in Auburn, in California here, and it was like the fastest growing company in Northern California, whatever. So I applied, ended up getting the job, and so I quit this job that gave me the relevant experience to finally kind of get my start in tech sales. So kind of a long-winded answer, but that's kind
No,
of
I love it.
the journey of
I
where I
love the
started
journey,
and where I
dude.
ended up.
What I have so many questions. What was it like? I have a serious and a fun one. I'll start with the fun one. What was it like calling someone to get their car repossessed? Like, can you help me understand what that cold call? I've made probably nearly 20,000 cold calls in my life. I've never had to make
Yeah.
one for that. So,
It, it it was terrible
Dude.
because there was a lot of people that were put in bad situations due to car dealerships, right? Like
Oh, okay, yeah.
dealership sold this poor single mom of four kids, the Chevy
Oh,
Tahoe.
that sucks. Okay,
She's paying
yeah.
all this money on it, right? And then she loses her job, or even worse, the transmission goes out. She can't afford to fix it. She's not going to keep making payments on it. So you have those scenarios, but then you also have these people who are generally just bad people who like bought a car knowing they were never going to pay for it
Yeah,
and were
see
just
that's
on the
what, yeah.
run.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so I would kind of feel it out where like I would give them a call and see how willing they were to like work with me, right? Because I mean, a big thing that people need to realize is like if they are like a good person and they're thinking about like long term, this is destroying their credit, right? So the faster they can get this resolved, this voluntary repo resolved, the faster they can get to rebuilding their credit. Other people don't really give a shit about that, right? So my tactic that I use, it was maybe a little slimy, was I could call as my investigator name, and I was investigator Chad Johnson, and I had a case number, which was like the repo number. And basically, at the time, this is not allowed anymore. You could call their family and say, "Hey, this is investigator Chad Johnson. I'm following up on case number this. I can't get any details, but can you have that person give me a call as soon as possible?" 9 times out of 10, they would call you immediately. Please stop calling my family. I'll do whatever. Like, we can meet. I'll drop off the car at this location. You can come pick it up, whatever.
Unreal.
That industry's gotten a lot more regulated at the time, but I mean, we just kind of had to figure out what to do because I mean, your only other options would be to like scrub addresses and just send, your tow trucks out to like whatever addresses you had on file or you
Yeah,
had
I got
access
that. I got
to.
that. That's just wild. That's a wild industry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's wild.
Yeah.
Transitioning, because I think it's important and it's something I've seen a lot of people do and have a hard time on. What was it like for you to um get into the tech sales industry, just period? Like, I know you went through like but like what was that journey like for you from more of like a mental perspective? You're like, okay, like I'm gonna try to get in the industry. Like I got denied. Like, can you walk us through what that was like for you?
Yeah, I think um it, it was tough, right? Because I think you get denied so many
Yeah.
times, you start to wonder, like, is this even possible, right? But I think I was also going about it the wrong way. I was like, I wanted to work for like these well-known companies. I think like we all fall into the same trap of like, oh, I want to go work for like a Salesforce or like a Stryker medical device, or I want to go work for this company. And like those are the companies that might have like very structured requirements from like an application and screening standpoint where like there's just no way unless you know somebody it would be like hard to get to the top of the pile where like some of these other smaller startups like they might look at every candidate or they might not have as stringent of requirements, right? I mean, this
Totally,
was an
totally.
in-office role, right, in Auburn, which is about 3+ hours outside of San Francisco, not in a tech hub. And honestly, the pay, I didn't know any better, but the pay was low. $23,000 base salary, $17,000 in commission, 40K OTE if you're hitting your number.
Damn, that's not a lot.
So not a lot of money, right? It's still in California. It's not an incredibly cheap place to live, but um, so that's where I got my start, right? And like that's just what I had to do. Like I went and worked for one of those companies,
Oh,
and
it's
honestly,
smart.
it
It's
wasn't
smart. Yeah,
easy, right? I had to convince them and sell them on me and what I was going to be able to be capable of, and then also too like from a relatable experience standpoint, like where I could bring that in and really shine. Because like a majority of their SDRs were cold calling. I had already had a ton of cold call experience, right? So that's one thing they really wouldn't have to take a chance on me on.
dude. Yeah. No, I actually, but I like the nugget you gave there of like, if you're getting trying to get in tech industry, like find a company that is kind of smaller, that's still good. It's not gonna go out of business tomorrow, but
Yeah.
like find one smaller that can kind of take a risk on you. Like
Right.
Salesforce is not gonna bend their rules for you,
Right.
unless
Right. I mean, unless you know, like maybe you
yeah,
know somebody, right? Like there is
maybe, yeah,
ways to
that
get
is
into these
true. That is
large
true.
organizations, right? Like if you
Yeah.
know someone and you can get a referral, but like if I have no experience in that industry at all and I go and shoot my resume into, whatever talent applicant tracking system
Yeah, no
Salesforce
way.
uses today, 10 out of 10 it gets denied. I get like an automatic email back, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Okay. So you were at Riskalyze, and then walk us through there all. Oh yeah, and just like keep going with your overall journey.
Nope, out, please. Get. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay, man. We're hanging out. It's okay. I was doing this with I was
I told them like, dude, Dad is going to be on an important call.
It's
Like,
all right,
please,
man. I
please do
was
not.
doing this with Will Falkenborg. He's become a good friend of mine, and his kid was throwing crap. So it's totally cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. We actually keep it in
Okay.
there. It's fun. Yeah, it's
All
totally
right.
cool.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No.
all right.
Cool.
It's not this is not the first time. Yeah.
So yeah, at Riskalyze, well, I guess what? Sorry, I got
Yeah.
distracted there. What did
No,
you
no,
want me
it's okay. So
to?
like you were at Riskalyze, like walk
Mhm.
us through your performance there. How'd you grow? And then like let's keep walking
Yeah.
through your path to where you got today.
Well, yeah, it was a wild time onboarding there. Just because like it's your standard onboarding, right? That like a lot of
Yeah.
companies I feel like are probably guilty of. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, welcome, sit down with HR, get your benefits, all your tech set up. All right, cool. Like, here's Tony. Tony's a top performer. Like, why don't you just sit by him? Here's like a script for you. Here's some
Yeah.
leads in your queue. Like, why don't you just sit by him and kind of like figure it out? And like, it was weird because people had like all sorts of different schedules. Like my boss at the time, he would get there at like 4:30 or 5 a.m. and then he would
Hmm.
leave by like 1. And then other people got in at 8 and worked till 5. And so it was like hard keeping up with everyone's schedules. So I kind of just had to figure everything out on my own,
Yeah.
really, right? By just reaching out and having some conversations. I feel like where I needed the most help was like how to use Salesforce and how to use the technology.
Hmm.
Having the conversations and picking up the phone like wasn't the hardest part, you know? And I think I also
Yeah.
got pretty lucky where like I did pick a spot that had like a very defined ICP. And so we were literally just calling financial advisors, right?
Yeah.
And
It helps
so think
though.
about the connect rate there, right?
Yeah.
They have an office they go to every day, at least at the time they did. You know, COVID might have messed some of that up, but they have to answer the phone because they're clients, right?
Yeah.
And we had like a very we were at the time really the only software that did what we did from a risk analysis standpoint. And we had some really great partnerships with like some big broker dealers out there too. So it was a really good spot to start because I feel like not that it was easy to exceed, right? But they had some of the stuff already figured out that maybe other companies of that size would have lacked, right? Where
Yeah,
maybe they didn't
totally.
really know their ICP, they really didn't have product market fit, they didn't know if they wanted to sell up market or down market or whatever they wanted to do, right? Like they had that kind of all figured out. And so it was a little bit easier just to plug in and really just get to work, which was nice.
Yeah, totally. And I know you've been an SDR leader at Gong, at Trey, at Talkdesk. Like what's some advice you have for folks that are just kind of trying to learn like how to be successful in SDR roles? I know you mentioned trying to learn everything on your own. Like what are some strategies or advice you have for people that are going through that right now, just trying to get
Yeah.
just get a grasp on the SDR role?
A big thing that I do is I pair people up from a shadow sessions
I like that.
perspective. And so, you know, a lot of people do not learn, like I can tell you, I do not learn from PowerPoint presentations.
Me either,
Like
yeah.
if you want to teach me something, like you can't invite, and I think most people don't learn that way either. Like I'm not going to retain much of that information, right? But flip side, let's say you share your screen and you show me how to do it, and then I share up my screen and do it back, right? That's how I learn. And that's how a lot of people learn. And so that's kind of how we've restructured like our onboarding, right? Is
Yeah.
like we'll start simple. Let's start in Salesforce, or let's start with how to cold call, like a script. Let's start with how to write an email. We'll break it down, but it's them sharing out the screen and doing the clicks. I'm just the guide on showing them how
Yeah,
to do it,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
But I would say definitely shadow sessions, but also like take guidance on like who you should be shadowing as well, right?
Hmm.
One, like, you know, this is to the leaders on here, like your top performers might not all want to do that. It does take up some time. And I know we're also really good about always just using the same people over and over again, which might get annoying as well. So just really think about who you're having shadow and making sure you have a few different people to pick from. So it's not just the same people every time, and make sure it's people that actually do want to help and are going to create like a positive experience for these people. You know,
Yeah.
the last thing you want to do is like set them up with that lone wolf that like they do well, but they like are not someone you'd want to follow because they're like an outlier where they maybe do some processes that aren't like, I don't know. You know what
They
I'm
aren't
getting to.
scalable. Yeah, I totally get it. I totally
Exactly.
get it. Yeah, I
Yep,
totally get that. I
exactly.
totally
Like
get
that'd
that.
probably be best for me to learn from them on like what good looks like and then maybe roll out like their processes, but having them teach it would be tough, you
Yeah.
know?
No, that's very good emotional intelligence though. So I like that a lot. Key things there: shadow the top performers, find out what they're doing. I don't think any of that's new, but I think it's a good reminder of what we need to be taught and what we need to learn. Because I think a lot of things people just like, yeah, like we need to be taught more than we need to than we need to learn.
Right.
I like that a lot. So walk me through then, like, how did you become successful as an SDR? Like, what were some of the key things that you did? Because obviously you became an SDR manager at some very good companies like Gong, like Talkdesk. Like, how did you become successful as an SDR? Can you walk us through that
Yeah,
journey?
so basically like I think one part was I had like a very dedicated schedule every day. So like
Okay.
I strive on structure, right?
Yeah.
And so there's no way like I could walk into a role where it's just like, hey, just give me 8 hours of work. Like, all right, cool. Like I've got to map out like what I want to be doing at those different increments of the day, but then on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, what I want to accomplish, right? So like a big thing for me was like how much effort do I need to get done today, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's my goal from a meeting set standpoint? Like knowing that that's not going to take me the full 8 hours, what else am I going to dedicate the rest of that time to, right? And so I was just a very structured person. Like I'd show up similar time every day. I would always go above and beyond on my activity metrics. I am super, super competitive. So I never wanted to be the lowest person on the scoreboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
If people were doing better than me, I was always doing shadow sessions with them to figure out what they were doing differently, to see any success factors I could get from them. I think because sometimes and everyone's guilty of falling into this trap, right? Like, let's say you're new to something and you're not good at it
Yeah.
at first, right? Which is normal. And then you see other people that are good at
Crush
it
it.
and
Yeah.
they're putting up the numbers. I feel like sometimes we like or it makes us frustrated because we're like we feel like maybe we're doing the same things they are, right? And then they're getting success and we're not, and so we're like, man, this sucks. I suck at this person's
Mm-hmm.
better. It's annoying. It's maybe you're jealous of the success. I don't know what it is, but it's like you need to accept the fact that there's things that they might be doing right that are contributing to them having better results than you. And if you are able to take some of those things from them, right, and implement in that own process, like where could that take you, right?
Yeah, I like that. That's a big thing I want to pull further on. How do you coach reps on because comparison's inevitable, especially in sales. I mean, your dashboard's a
Yeah,
literal comparison, right? So
yeah.
it's literally all it is. It's like quotas are
Yeah.
made off comparison, everything's made off comparison. So it's like, how do you coach reps on how to stay patient with results so that they can again achieve in on their own timeline?
I think it's all about goal setting at the end of the day, right? Like, let's just say somebody's at like a low quota attainment today, and then like my North Star that I'm trying to get them to is like 100%.
Hmm.
Like, how attainable would that feel to you? Like, let's just say, like, for instance, like
Yeah,
you're at 40% of quota today. And I'm like, our goal is we need to get you by 100% by next month. That might not be possible, right? And then
yeah,
plus, if I'm at 40% and I'm already feel like I'm working super hard, like
yeah,
I don't know if I can. I've never hit 100%. So you telling me I need to get there, like I don't know how motivating that is. So it's like, why don't we be realistic, right, on where we can get to, right? I think first it's figuring out what are the key, what's maybe just one thing you could do differently that would make the biggest impact, right?
dude.
And then on top of
Yes,
that, like let's set a
yes,
realistic goal of where we think we could get to so that I feel like I'm making progress, right? Like, sure, maybe the end goal is to get to 100% of quota,
yeah,
but maybe that's not attainable in this amount of timeline, right? So it's like, why don't we just plan on how do we get to 70% first, right? And then
yeah,
once we get to 70%, now let's figure out, okay, let's analyze how you got to 70% and what's missing to get to you from 100, right?
dude. Yeah.
Um, because I feel like a lot of people fall into the same trap. They think the difference between them and somebody else is just the activity they're doing. And it's not at the end of the day, right? A lot of it has to do with just conversion rates, right? Of actually what's happening from the conversations that you're doing, right?
how do you diagnose that? Because I want to applaud you for the emotional intelligence to go, okay, like if someone's at 40%, I shouldn't say that they I mean shouldn't, but like it wouldn't be wise to put say next month we're gonna be at 100, although it is possible, but like, it just
Yeah,
depends
it
what the
is.
personality is. But then like, how do you coach someone through diagnosing their own lack of success or even just their own ability to improve, even if they're at 100%, how do you get to 150? Right? How do you help them diagnose that? Because I agree with you on the conversion rates. That's where the leverage is. But like, how do you coach them through that?
Yeah, so a big thing what I like to do first is I like to take a look under the hood myself, right?
Mhm.
To see first, like compared to the rest of the team, right? Like what are their leads, from an inbound standpoint? Like how much help are we getting from inbound, right? Because that could be a problem from an inbound conversion standpoint. And then also what are we doing from an outbound standpoint? And I like to kind of figure out, what good looks like, I
Mhm.
guess. In because you need like a floor basically at the end of the day. I know we
Yeah.
were talking with Kevin Dorsey about this like last week, right? And I feel like you need like a floor of like the minimum amount of like work that you should expect on like a weekly basis, right? And so I think as sad as it is to say, right? Like part of it is actually putting in the work.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like we've shied away from that. Everyone's like, oh, it's a quality over quantity play, and we can't spray and pray and all that. It's like, yes, I get that, but there's still conversion rates at the same time, right? Like everyone's gonna have a connect rate, everyone's gonna have a conversion rate of connect and beating,
Dude,
right? And so
yeah.
it's like I don't want to be one of those people who is like, I'm just going to send out like 10 really personalized emails. And it's like, okay, well, realistically, right? What's a good what's a good reply rate? What is that going to get? Like those 10 emails might get you not even one reply, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what was the point? So I think you need to have like a floor of a minimum type of activity. And are they at
Yeah.
least meeting that? But then also too, like, do they have a dedicated channel, right? That they're seeing success from? And can we double down on that? I mean, we made the mistake of I have someone on my team who is really, really good at social, right? But, as we always want to do, it's like, all right, we're already winning from social. How could we then like hit other channels as well to get more success? Terrible idea. If a person's already doing super well from social, why wouldn't we figure out how to double down on social versus pulling some of her effort off of social to then work on two channels that she's not getting results from, right? And so we kind of had to reposition, get her back into the social piece of it, and then also figure out now how do we leverage phone and email to then help drive more success via social.
Dude, that is the fucking question. Yeah, I think that is I like that a lot. So it sounds like it's really understanding like what's the minimum activity levels. I agree with you. There is just basic conversion rates, and then it's okay.
Yeah.
What does good look like, and then how do I coach someone to that point while they
Yeah.
are doing the minimum threshold or more? So
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I also want to dive into, you how do you help SDRs deal with doubt? Because I mean, you even mentioned like you had no problem picking up the phone when you first came in SDR because you're so used to the failure and stuff like that. But like, I think a lot of people really struggle with that. I mean, I even look at people that I've been around or worked with that have really struggled picking up the phone. I just like I get it, but like, how do you help people through that? I'm sure you see it all the time. How do you help people through
Yeah, I
doubt and
do.
fear of failure?
It's just building up the confidence. And I think it's just a practice thing, right? Like, I think if you have a script that they can follow, you've practiced it a lot.
Mhm.
I think another thing is like, don't do calls alone, right? When you're first getting started, like,
Oh, that's a good
here's the hard
point.
part. Like,
That's a good
if
point.
I'm starting in an office, right, and everyone's making calls on the floor, well, it's
Yeah.
going to be kind of weird if I don't pick up the phone and make calls, right? But when I'm sitting home alone in my home by myself, no one's making calls in my house, it's not as motivating of an environment. But let's say I have a buddy, right? Where I'm like, all right, me and Bo, every day from like 9 to 10, and then every day from 1 to 2, we meet up on a Zoom and rip cold calls together. Like that is a little bit more motivating for me, right? Because
Yeah.
I get to go do it with somebody else, right? And I have a little bit of
Totally.
accountability partner as well, right?
Totally. Yeah. So it sounds like it's the environment and then it's just I heard environment like getting around people who are doing it, preparation, and then just reps.
Yeah. And I think just getting comfortable. I think too, like the people just like the pressure's on, right? So they're thinking like, I got to call these people and I've got to somehow convince them to take a meeting with me. And I think if we reframe it as in like that's actually not the goal of the call at all. The goal is just to call and have a conversation with somebody. And as
Yeah.
long as you could walk away with like one helpful piece of information you didn't have prior to that call, like that's a win at the end of the day, right? You
Yeah,
have
I
more
totally agree.
information now than you did before. Like, sure, you didn't get a meeting, but like could you have gotten, is that person even going to take a meeting from you? Right. There might have been nothing you could do. Like, I don't know. And sometimes we think we fall into this trap of like every call needs to turn into a meeting and that there's some like sort
Oh,
of silver
totally.
bullet talk track
Yeah.
or methodology we could follow that like gives us a crazy high conversion rate. And then I think the other thing I see reps fail on is they're just constantly changing their approach over and over and over again. So
Mm.
they're never getting confident in what they're doing because they're just
What do you think
trying to
causes
change
that?
everything. It's like, oh, I
What?
talked to John. John uses this
Yes.
opener. But like I used it for a day and one person hung up on me. So now I'm going to use Megan's opener. And then like, oh, this person uses this pitch. Oh, but it didn't work for me because I didn't book a meeting with the one person I
Dude.
talked to. So now I'm going to change it again. It's like
Yeah.
terrible. And it happens all the freaking time. I also think too, something that's not helping from a cold calling standpoint is all of this crap on LinkedIn about how outbound's dead, cold calling's dead, executives ripping apart people that called them. Like that's not helping either. And I have caught a couple of my reps falling into the trap where they're reading stuff on LinkedIn and now they're starting to think that like every prospect feels that way, right? When they really don't, right? We
It's not.
don't.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. What I want to double down on something you said. What do you think causes people to continually switch approaches here? Is I think there's something that yeah, there's something that I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. What causes people to continually switch approaches in terms of outbound, in terms of openers, things like that?
They don't, yeah, they don't see success from it, right? And the problem is they give themselves a really short amount of time to see
Yes,
success.
see, this
I
is what I was
think,
getting to. Patience, bro. Patience.
yep,
Freaking
yep.
patience.
It's the
Yeah,
same thing with like talk to
dude.
any sales development leader on
Dude.
why they haven't gotten video to scale at their company. I guarantee you why is because their team spent a whole day sending out emails and they got no meetings booked from it. It took a ton of time and they're never going to touch it again. Like it's the
Dude.
same thing with everything. We were like,
Dude. Oh
we were
God, you
like,
hit it
all
on the
right,
head.
today we're gonna cold call everybody. We have no plan, we have no strategy, we haven't practiced our scripts enough. We're just gonna go out and cold call, right? And we're gonna get results. And then we don't have results. And so then people are like, well, fuck, I made 100 cold calls today. I talked to two people. They both hung up on me. The phone doesn't work. It's never going to be successful, you know?
Dude, the lack of I'm now kind of riffing with you, but like the lack of patience sometimes just is just brutal, man. Like I need to remind myself too, but boy, I'll say like I don't know what it is, dude, but it is unreal. Like the
It's
thing
the
you hit
same
on is
thing
just
with career progression as well, right? Like, I understand that maybe as an industry, we've done a disservice at like illustrating what a promotion path could look like from a timeline standpoint. And I do understand yes, there's been people that promote out of the SDR realm after 6 months. Some people might have taken 2 to 3 years, right? And I understand we might showcase the 6 to 9 month or even a year a
because
lot
yeah,
bigger
it
than
looks
any of the
sexy.
others.
Yeah.
We start to think that it's the mindset. Think about any other career. Is there like think about it. I can't think of many careers where like in a year you could promote to another level and essentially like 2, 3, 4, 5x your income, right? Like I don't know. I just think of like a lot. Think about me as a mechanic, right? Like to 5x my income, like I might take my whole life to get to that point.
Yeah.
There might not even be a possibility to be able to do that, right? And so it gets back to that patience thing of like, you know, am I even ready at 6 months to move into that new role,
Dude, and I
right?
also, yeah, exactly. I also want to add something that I saw. So you did an interview with 30 Minutes with the President's Club years ago, and I was listening to it. And one of the things that I think you brought up that was really good, I'm gonna paraphrase, but essentially it was something, it was about like know like what's in it for them as far as the prospect, right? Know
Right.
what's in it for them. I'm trust me, I'm gonna bring this back. I think the challenge is as if you're really early, and my manager's done a really good job of getting me to see it this way, like you need to realize that you need to provide an immense amount of value to the prospects who you are talking to and your customers, and not just try to like sell them something. You have to provide an immense amount of value and understand what is in it for them. Also plug for Marcus Chan. He did a really good job coaching me on this too. Like it's just like it has taken me a year and a half to like finally get that emotionally. Like I knew it logically, but emotionally locked in. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. It takes time.
Yeah.
So you,
Well,
how can you
we don't
expect
look
like
at
a
the
six
buyer's
month promotion
journey.
path?
We don't look at the buyer. We don't understand the buyer's journey is the problem, right? Like you are reaching out to a majority of people who are unaware of a problem
Yeah,
they have,
yeah.
right? And so they're not looking at solutions, or they might be aware of that problem, but they might not be open to looking at solutions. And we're just trying to sell them a solution to
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? Which is like, I think it's the wrong way of looking at it, right? And I've been guilty of this plenty of times before, right? Of just pitching, trying to sell a demo, right?
Yeah.
But missing out on like what's actually in it from these people from like a value standpoint. And I think the things we forget about is like think about who you sell to, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say, you sell to financial advisors, right? How many financial advisors does that financial advisor meet with on like a yearly basis? Probably not a ton, right? Like I even think about how many SDR managers I meet with on a yearly basis. Like it's not a lot, right? So now think about, a company like Outreach who meets with SDR managers every day. Who do you think knows the most about what's going on from like an SDR manager outbound, like future of SDR standpoint? Me or Outreach AE who is going to talk to 300 SDR leaders this year? Probably the AE, right? Like nine times out
You
of
would
10.
hope so. You would hope
Yeah,
so.
so
Yeah.
why are we not leaning on that, right? Like it should be more than just showcasing the product. Like we're also going to be able to provide you value on like what other SDR managers are working on, what we're seeing convert from an outbound standpoint.
Yeah.
Like you're going to gain value from this outside of us just showing you a
But
product,
you want to
right?
do like I will say people don't study this. People don't study their consumers enough. I can't like people just don't. I noticed that at previous companies that we both worked at. I just like people don't study the. I'm not saying I'm perfect either, but I'll tell you, man. Like I'm probably one of the few AEs that has ever like, intentionally sat down with a marketing leader and just said, "Hey, I just want to learn about your day. I've nothing to sell you," right? And
Right.
just like rare,
Yeah.
rare,
I
right? And
mean,
like
part of outbound though, right, is slowing down,
yeah,
right? And there's not a sales cycle with some of these people right now, right? But
totally.
I do know at some point there is maybe, an avenue of where we could kick off a sales cycle or maybe some sort of project that's going to come up in the coming year or so. And so
Yeah,
like I want them at least to know who I am and have some sort of a relationship
I
with
agree.
them. So it makes it easier to reach it. That's why like
Yeah.
going after close loss opportunities is so huge, right? Because it might
Yeah.
have not been a priority then, but you follow up a year later, it's probably a priority now, right? And you pick up the
Okay.
conversation and those convert
Yeah.
obviously at a lot
How do
higher.
you teach SDRs this? So an SDR is going to go, or even AE is going to go, hey, Parker, it all sounds nice. I have a quota to hit. My
Yeah.
manager's all over me. My manager's actually starting to micromanage me because pipeline's getting lower. And so now
Yeah.
I got people in my dog dish. How do I
Yeah.
slow down?
How do you slow down from what? Sorry, I didn't catch
Yeah,
that
no, but
last
like
part.
how it's like the advice the if you say slow down, I know an AE or BDR is gonna go, hey, it sounds great, but like my manager's in my dog dish, our pipeline's lower, I'm not hitting quota. Like, how am I supposed to slow down? Like, I just need meetings, right? And like
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna say.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, these are meetings, right? They're meetings with, like, here's my thing. If I schedule you a meeting with a target account that Talkdesk has said, like, hey, this is an account we want to sell Talkdesk to, and it's a persona that is a part of our buying persona, and you don't want to take that meeting, like it's fucking mind blowing to me. Like, why would you not want to take that meeting? I understand they might not have a project right now, but this person has agreed to sit down and talk with you for 30 minutes, right? I feel like we maybe just don't know how to roll that call out, like how to run that call. Like, I think over the years, we've gotten so good at being like order takers and running these
Yeah.
inbound calls, right? Where like it's just a checklist, right? It's like, all right, do you have budget? Do you have a timeline where you want to
Do you have
implement this?
authority?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like we got to get back to like doing real discovery, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying slow down as like don't try to sell them something, but I'm saying slow down and actually like really understand their business and what they're trying to accomplish this year, and try to see if there's any huge initiatives or huge goals you can attach yourself to. Like that's how we can create urgency from an outbound perspective. But if we don't have these meetings, right? Like I don't know how
You're
we're
not
ever
getting
going
the
to get that
insight.
information.
Yeah.
It's not living somewhere, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think the challenge is the discipline to stay to pause and to go slower to go do that is
Yeah.
challenging, especially for someone right now who like I love what I do. I could sit here and do this with you all day. I could sit here and cold call all
Right.
day and just have a blast. You know, but like
Yeah.
most people don't. So it's like, how do you have the discipline and develop that? I think that's a harder conversation. That's not as easy as just go do it. I agree with you though.
It's
I'm no.
it's it's change management or like behavior management at the end of the day, right? Like I feel like a lot of people just fell into the same type of behavior. And it's also too when a lot of people got into tech, right? Like a lot of people got into tech during the pandemic and stuff like that. And like, dude, during the pandemic, it was nuts, right? Like think about all these AEs who and SDRs and everyone basically were like the job became pretty easy for a lot of companies, right?
Yeah.
But like times have changed quite a bit, you know. It's especially hard for like if you're a technology where like maybe they don't have it already and then a line item doesn't exist for it in their
Hmm.
budget. I think that's even like a tougher sell right now too, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Yeah, I'm an AE. I definitely experience that from time to time. Um, let's transition a little bit. How'd you know that you wanted to get into BDR or SDR leadership and like what is that? Yeah,
Had no interest.
can you
Yeah,
walk
I
us through that?
had I had no interest. I have like it's so funny. Like I have never had any interest like managing people. That was never
Hmm.
like a dream of mine, right? Um but now looking back throughout my whole life, like I've always been a leader in everything I did. Friend groups, sports teams, whatever. Like I always felt like maybe maybe I'm not the top player, right? But I'm a leader on the team that
Hmm.
like people would follow. And so I had signed my offer to go the AE route. And then coincidentally, my manager at the time had gotten let go, and the rec opened, and they approached me. We're like, "Hey, we think you should." The VP of sales and the CEO were like, "Hey, you should apply for this role." I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm not interested. Like, I already accepted this role in the AE team. Like, that's where I want to go." And they're like, "Yeah, but." I still think it'd be good for you to interview for it, right? Like, you know, you might want to go into sales leadership sometime down the road. Like, you should interview, at least just get some experience interviewing for management roles. I'm like, okay, sure. What do you want me to do? So I put together this 30, 60, 90 presentation. At the end of the call, basically, they're like, all right, Parker, like, we'll give you either job. You could pick AE or SDR leadership. What job do you want? And I was just started thinking about it. I'm like, uh, I thought I wanted to say AE, but then I was also worried because like I was also naive. I thought I was going to work at this company forever because it's like my
Hmm.
first tech job. And so I'm thinking long term, like if I say no to a leadership role now, would they potentially like pigeonhole me into like, well, you know, there is a sales leadership role, but like remember, you don't want to go into leadership. You want to stay like an IC. And so I told them I think I'd be good at both. You put me in whatever position you need me in or where you think I'd make the most impact. Well, that's where they put me. They put me managing the SDR team that I was an SDR on like the week prior, which was interesting to say the least.
That is interesting. What was that like for you managing your former colleagues?
Very hard because I knew all of the bad habits. I knew everyone's feelings about the company. And I mean, to be honest with you, two people quit my second week on the job.
Yeah.
They wrote resignation letters at like midnight at the same time, quit at the same time with the CEO tagged on the email, came in and dropped off their stuff at the front desk when no one was around. That was really hard. And it was because one of them was applying for the role and didn't get it. And they had a degree in management. And so, since that degree in management and they had been a top performer, they thought it was like an obvious choice. And so, when they chose me, who didn't even really want the management job, it did
It
not
was kind
go
of like a
well.
yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't anything against me. It was just more of this person thought they were deserving. And then their close friend obviously was also upset about it. So they both exited the company. So then
got
it
it.
was just rebuild time, really. I mean, I pretty much just started rebuilding a brand new team. And there was a couple people that we needed to get rid of. And then it was just all about hiring and onboarding. And the great part about it is I already knew how to be a successful SDR, right? At that company. And so all I really had to do was go out, hire the best people I thought for the job, show them the process to follow. And then, we started getting results and we became the top team not long after that. And it's funny, the other manager that I worked with just didn't have like they were good, but they didn't come from that same background. Like they were hired as a manager. And
Hmm.
so I felt like that was always my edge that kind of got me to overperform over them. Is like I had done the job before there. And so then I was like really good at coaching, but then I also never really stopped doing the job either.
Yeah, which I think is one of the advantages that you have is you always kind of stay in tune with what your BDRs and SDRs are going through because that's
Yeah,
one of the things I
exactly.
think is potentially lacking in a lot of sales leadership. With that being said, what you've been a leader at a lot of orgs, Gong, Trey, Talkdesk. Like, what are some of the hardest parts about being a leader that folks who maybe are considering a role as a leader that they wouldn't otherwise know?
Yeah, you can't make everyone happy at the end of the day. You so badly want to, um, you just can't. Like you just need to know that there's things you're gonna have to do and there's decisions you're gonna have to make that are gonna piss people off or people aren't gonna be happy with, and you just have to be okay with that. There's rare instances, where you could roll out things where like everyone is going to be pumped. There's always that like one outlier, somebody that's going to be upset. I'd say like the other mistakes I've made is like I spent a lot of time caring way more than that person cared. So I was
Okay.
like putting in crazy effort. They weren't matching my effort. And so I was basically just wasting my time with someone who didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be successful. And then it, ended with them leaving. And so the trap I fell into was that was taking time away from some of my more top performers, right? And so then I
Mhm.
think back to like if I would have dedicated that time to somebody else that wanted to take the coaching, that wanted to put in the effort, they wanted to match my effort, like I will run through walls to make you successful. I will do
Yeah.
anything to remove barriers you're having from success. Like all I care about is your success, and that's why I've stayed in leadership so long. But if you can't even do the minimal things we're asking you to do, like it's not a mutual beneficial relationship anymore.
Yeah.
I think you need to be okay with just letting people go at the end of the day, right? Like I was just scared of doing that. So I'm like, man, this sucks. This person's gonna lose their job. I don't want them to hate
Totally.
me. Are they gonna like flip out when I fire them? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, I think about people that I've had these conversations with, like they've all gone and found something else or found success somewhere else. This might have just not, I might have not been the manager for them. This might have not been the company for them. They might have been going through a rough part in their role. I mean, I'll never remember this guy that, they wanted me at Riskalyze. They're like, all right, your first job is I want you to take this bottom performer and like turn him around. Well, this guy had been an SDR here for 3 years. He should be a top performer, right? He's been here the longest. He knows everything. And so I had a talk with him, and turns out he wanted to be a financial advisor. He had no interest in moving up the sales ladder or doing anything at our company, right? And so I think he was just too scared to make the jump. And so we ended up getting rid of him. And yeah, fast forward, like he's a financial advisor now, right?
There you go.
Owns a home. Pretty sure he's getting married, like super, super successful, makes a ton of money. Like, but he might have gotten there. We might have pushed him to get there a little bit quicker, right?
Love that. Yeah, I
Um,
love it.
it's
I
it's not
absolutely love it.
always bad when you have to say goodbye to somebody, right? Like
I
sometimes they
get
will
that.
go on and do better things. This just might have not been the successful environment for them. So kind of you just got to understand. Like I think the other pieces too. Like you just got to control what's in your control. I would give that same advice to an IC as well. Like
Yeah.
you just can't control some of these things, right? Like some of this stuff just happens, and you just kind of got to roll with it at the end of the day. Um, it's the hard part of being a people leader. I think you also get pretty good at like learning that like you can't manage everyone the same. as well. Like there's no like blanket management style. Like
Mhm.
there's people I have different relationships with on the team. Like my big thing is building trust and like a strong relationship with everyone on the team. But like my like management style might be a little bit different with everybody,
Yeah.
right? Just based on like, how they get motivated and how they take feedback and how they like to be managed, right? There is people that need to be micromanaged, like me, right? Like I like structure. I need a structured day. I need set goals to hit, right? I like to stay busy. I like to get shit done. But I'm not somebody that would like I thrive from structure, right? That's why I like my job so much. Like my job is very structured every week. Like I know what my goals are, I know what I'm trying to get accomplished, I know
Mhm.
what I'm going to be doing at every point of the day. And so some people thrive from that. So I think we forget we don't want to be a micromanager, but like some people need that. Some people need minimum activity metrics. Some people need you to help them build calendar blocks. Some people need you to remind them of these things, right? And it's not that you're being a micromanager. It's this is what these people need to succeed. And the thing is, what makes you a micromanager is when you try to do that to people who don't need that, right?
Yeah.
Uh, People that can have the autonomy and just like there's just people that just do that. They can just roll into a role and they just know what to do. They're turnkey. You don't need to bother them as much. Those are the people you're going to spend a lot of time just moving barriers out of their way, continuing that like career and professional development and learning to like keep them locked in and keep them sprinting forward, keep them motivated, make sure they're making money, everything like that.
Dude, I really respect is how well you understand how to lead and um just unbelievable, man. Seriously, I really mean that. Like you really understand different personalities and like how to adjust based off the different personalities. I just like, dude,
It,
I really admire that.
I appreciate that. It took me a long time to get here, and I think now I can understand it a lot quicker. Before, it took me a lot of time of asking the reps the questions to understand, right? And like sometimes, like still, I have tough reps where I have to literally ask them, like, okay, your last job you were obviously successful in, like, what was that environment like that made you so successful? Like, what are the things your manager did that like motivated you or didn't motivate you or whatever? So you can kind of learn like what this person likes and dislikes from a management style perspective too, you know?
Totally, totally, man. I really, really appreciate that. Um, with that being said, I know we're about at time here, so I will ask you this before we ask the final question. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn, the best place to find me.
There's a lot of good nuggets out there. If there's one outbound fact or one outbound reminder you'd have to give to Sales Nation, what would it be right now?
I would say outbound is not dead, right? And stop reading into these one-off posts like trashing outbound or trashing a certain channel of outbound. I just got on one of my reps about this the other day. They posted that they were like basically what happened was I brought in somebody that comes from the retail side. They were selling motorcycles, right? And so they're used to following up on a lot of inbound leads. And like, think how ruthless like that kind of industry is, right? Like they like they're texting, they're emailing, they're calling, like they're following up because like if I get an inbound lead, that's way better than waiting for someone to walk into my dealership to buy something, right? Where like I feel like on the SDR side or just sales side in general, we've got a little soft because someone once yelled at us because we texted them or we read online that like you should never text your prospects from like one person who like has no idea what they're talking about. And so we start to get these like fears in our head that like that's not going to go over well. And so they had posted like something along those lines, like in a Slack that like this person was doing that. And so they didn't think it would like work or they didn't think people would like it. And they did it and got a meeting. And so I kind of got on them a little bit like, hey, like, what are we so worried about at the end of the day, right? Like it gets back to the same management fact. Like you can't make everyone happy. And the fact is, some people are just going to be upset that you reach out to them. And there's nothing
No
wrong
matter
with
what,
that.
no matter what, you get the best. I agree with this. This is something I agree with. No matter what, someone's gonna be pissed that you reached out. It just is what it is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we're almost doing ourselves a disservice of like stopping that, right? Because there's other people who would respond to that really well. Look, I never answer the phone. I'm on meetings like this all day. I'm working with my reps. I don't have time to talk to people on the phone. Also, other industries have ruined the phone for me. Like if I knew it was an SDR calling, I would answer every time because I want to hear what other companies are saying and I want to like give them an at bat. But dude, it's all these mortgage companies, financial companies trying to sell me a loan or a mortgage or a car or debt relief or whatever crap. There's solar. Those are the people that are calling me. I don't even know who's an SDR and who's not anymore. And so I would be really receptive to one, someone who left me a voicemail because I do read the transcriptions for every voicemail to know who's calling to see if I need to call them back. And then also, too, someone just sent me a text, right? And a couple of people have done that, right? And I text them back because I text. That's what I do. I text. I pick up the phone and call people. I'm just really bad at answering the phone.
Yeah, I feel you.
So you've just got to know that find the channel that has the most success from you. But on top of that, like, even though people say like the multi-channel approach doesn't work, it does because you're missing out on those prospects that aren't receptive on those other channels as well.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's essentially like do what's working, but also be open to something new, and especially if it's uncomfortable, and don't buy into everything that you see online. I totally agree with that.
There's no filtering on LinkedIn. I could go and post whatever I want today.
Well,
And
yeah,
and
dude.
the unfortunate part about it is there's people that would read it and believe it, right? I just think that there's a lot of satire out there to like promote the product they're using or their agency or their course or just to just generally put people down.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are the posts that get a lot of traction. They get a lot of engagement. And so a lot of people see that. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story before we go. A friend of mine like was taking all of this like SDR dying, layoffs, everything was getting posted as like a really doom and gloom. Where I got a form to fill out a letter of recommendation for them to go and get their master's. And I picked up the phone and called them like, what the heck is going on? They're like, bro, our industry is dead. Like everyone's getting laid off. The SDR model's dying. Everyone's talking about it online. I feel like maybe I should just go back to school and like go in a whole different career trajectory. I'm just like, oh, holy shit. Like this is the power of social media. It could literally get someone to believe that all this stuff is true, right? At the end of the day, it's a business, right? Like you're either, creating the results and making money for the business or you're not. I don't think there's any way to say that like blanket, everything is broken, everything is dead, every company's doing layoffs, whatever it may be. I mean, I just don't think you can blanket statement that, but people are, and people are taking it to heart. So say advice for anyone's listening to this, just be careful of what you're writing on LinkedIn, right? Like post what you want, but just also know like other people are going to read this and they might take it to heart in the wrong way, you know? So just really reread and just really think like, is this something that would help people or give someone direction or like a learning from, or is this just like
Yeah,
not
is it
something that I should
yeah,
post on LinkedIn,
I totally
you
agree.
know?
Yeah. Final question. What is if someone didn't have time to listen to this, but they can only listen to what you're about to say now? Let's say it's an SDR and AE, it's really struggling to hit quota, or maybe it's someone that wants to get into the tech industry. What's the one piece of advice that you would have for them leaving
Yeah.
this
Ask people for help. Ask people for help.
I like that. I like
That's
that.
it. Ask people for help, right? Like I might not, I might like from an AE standpoint, right? Like we might need to help the prospect. The prospect might not even know how to buy technology at their company, right? On the SDR side, we might not even know who the right person to talk to at this company would be. Like ask ask people for help. Like when you humanize a conversation and you break it down that like you're doing your job and this is what I'm looking to accomplish, and like I honestly am new and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just looking for
Yeah.
some guidance here. Like people, like there's still people who probably tell you to F off, but there is people out there that
Well,
will
people
help
help
you.
you. Yeah.
Just ask for it. Don't be afraid to admit you don't know how to do something. Don't be like me. Basically, like what I did a lot of, which I've broken the habit of, is like I didn't want anyone to think that like I didn't know what I was doing or that I might be afraid of like asking a stupid question. And so that I made like a shit ton of mistakes because I didn't ask for help on all these things.
Yeah.
All that could have been avoided if I just asked for help. A prospect, my manager, another person at the company, a hiring manager, somebody else that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, whatever it may be, right? Like there's good people out there. Like we just got to be better at asking for help sometimes. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
I like that. We'll end on that. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Parker, this has been amazing. You've given some really good leadership insight, tons of good outbound nuggets. Dude, thank you so much. Seriously, I'm really, really grateful that you
Yeah.
know